Joining me right now is California Republican Congressman Devin Nunes, who is the ranking member on the House Intel Committee. He also sits on the House Ways and Means Committee as well. And Congressman, it's always a pleasure to see you. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Maria. Always a pleasure.
Well, you're in California, where, of course, we have a wall separating Tijuana and San Diego. What's your reaction to the president's move to wait 2 weeks to see if the Democrats actually approach this issue?
Well, the president is growing in office, right? I mean, he knows that he can't do it by himself. And I think what he's doing is the Democrats asked him if he would delay this. He's saying, OK, I'll give you 2 weeks. Now, remember, the Democrats have been in office for 6 months now. They have yet to move a comprehensive immigration bill. And I think that's what the American people need to focus on, is the people that they elect have responsibilities to pass legislation. They can't just oppose what the president wants to do, because, as you know, you've been at the border, you know that it's a disaster down there. It is a humanitarian crisis, and this is a problem that could easily be fixed if we wanted to do it.
You're right. When we were at the border and seeing those children being mowed around by people, we weren't even sure if they were actually their families, and then the kids are showing up sick. It was actually such a crisis, and so obviously a crisis when we were at the border. Why aren't your colleagues addressing this? Do you think anything can get done, first within this 2 weeks that the president is giving them to attack these loopholes, or just all year?
The truth is, Maria, they don't want to get anything done. The Democrats they race bait. So they are only using this for identity politics. So they're going to people of Hispanic descent, and then they're saying, all of you guys, we're helping all of you. The Republicans are bad. Trump is bad. They're trying to demonize Trump. If you watch the language and the rhetoric that comes from the left, it's scary, really. And hopefully over time, people of Hispanic descent will understand that the Democrats are only using them. They're not actually trying to help them. If they were trying to help them, they would have passed a bill already. I mean, they've got plenty of votes. I mean, they could do a bill that would have border security. They could put in some permit systems. They could take care of all the kids that were brought here by no fault of their own. And by the way, those are all things that Donald Trump wants to do too. It's just that Donald Trump says, hey, I'll do all of that, but I also want to have a wall so that we have long-term, lasting security on our southern border.
So go through these loopholes and tell us specifically what needs to be changed, because I know that there's one loophole that basically it's catch and release. We catch you at the border and we process it, and then we have to let you out. And not to mention the fact that the detention centers are all overwhelmed. There's not another seat in the House for anybody.
Yeah, so the easiest way, in my opinion, to fix all of this is that you put in a permit system. So you put in a system where if somebody is employing you, you have to actually file with the government what's called E-Verify. It's a voluntary program now. It's worked really, really well. And that means if everybody was certified by the government that everybody working for you is in fact here on a legal permit, that in the long run is great. Now, you can't have that without a permit system, because everyone knows that in this country, we've got millions of people that are here on either expired permits or they never had a permit in the first place. And look, it's important for us to have workers in this country that want to do jobs that in many cases are quite skilled, right? Whether it's working in agriculture, which now is really you need technology, you need people that know how to drive complicated equipment, all the way to really smart people that are developing the next generation using math and science and developing the next generation of computer technology. We want all these people to be in the country. We don't want them to be on a permit system. And if you do that along with the wall, you take care of the people that are here, it's really an easy solution. And I don't want to act like it's easier than it is, but the technology today allows us to do it, because we've already proven that this E-Verify system works with people who have voluntarily been taking part in it.
Now, we already let in, 1 million people a year in a legal way. They go through the process, get the green card, et cetera. Then we also have, on the illegal side of the ledger, 1 million apprehensions we're talking about likely this year. That's what Vice President Mike Pence told me just a couple of weeks ago. So, I mean, do they think that it's okay to just have 1 million people coming in every year in an illegal way and just continuing to flood the country without any accountability? I mean, what is the answer when you raise all of this?
It goes to what I said. There's only one answer. The answer is that they don't care about these people. They're not trying to solve the problem. They are using identity politics because they want to say, if you're of Hispanic descent in this country, vote for us, the Democrats. That's all they're trying to do. And how do we know that? Because they're really just taking advantage of these people, and we know it because they don't have a bill.
Yeah.
They have no legislation. They have nothing. And they're in control. They've got plenty of votes. They don't even need a Republican vote to pass this. Because all of them claim that they're going to give amnesty to all of them. So, and I don't think the president would actually sign that, but at least they should have a bill.
And tell me about what specifically you are waiting on, Congressman, in terms of this letter that you sent to Christopher Wray on Friday.
Well, we've learned in the last month that there was information that the #2 person in the European Affairs Department of the State Department, and if you recall, we've long been looking at the State Department, looking for any information the State Department had on Christopher Steele or anything involved in this Russia hoax. So that information, we now know that the government had that in 2016. So the State Department, in October of 2016, emails went to the FBI saying things like that Christopher Steele was not believable, that he wanted to bring this out before the election. That should be a big red flag. Also said that this so-called Russia hoax, the operation against Trump, or with Trump, that Trump was a part of, was being run out of the Russian consulate in Miami. Well, it ends up, guess what? There is no Russian consulate in Miami. So this #2 person at the State Department named Kavalek, she informed the FBI of these concerns. Now, why is that important? It's important for a number of reasons, but first and foremost, the FISA court should have had this. The FBI had it. The FISA court should have had it before they went and spied on the Trump campaign by getting a warrant on Carter Page. Another reason why this is important for the FBI is because the Congress, under the Republican control last time, asked for anything and everything on Christopher Steele. Clearly, if we would have had this 2.5 years ago when we started this investigation, we would be in a much different place today than we are.
Yeah.
So, because this is clearly obstructing a congressional investigation. So someone at the FBI determined to hide this information, not provide it to the court, and what I'm concerned about is not provide it to the U.S. Congress. So they have till Friday to get it to us, and if they don't, we will make our 9th criminal referral. Basically, we won't know exactly who at the FBI obstructed justice, but some Durham or the Department of Justice should be able to figure it out, because there's emails that went around and somebody decided not to give it to the Congress.
Yeah, we're looking right now at the information that you requested from Director Wray, and you write in the letter the date that the FBI was informed about the transmission of information from Kathleen Kavalek, including but not limited to the information now known as the Steele dossier. So Ms. Kavalek was the #2 person at the FBI, at the State Department in Europe, and she basically raises her hand, raises a red flag about the Steele dossier. She does her due diligence. She says, look, this is not trustworthy. Christopher Steele's work is not credible. And that memo from Kavalek is not shown to the FISA court. This is exculpatory evidence that was not included in the FISA warrant. Do you think that the FISA judge may have reacted differently had he known that there were State Department people who were saying this information is not credible, rather than just handing over a warrant to wiretap on Carter Page?
I think all Americans should be furious at this, right? So on one hand, we now know for sure that someone at the FBI kept this from the court. #2, they also kept this from congressional investigators, meaning the Republicans that have been investigating this for 2.5 years. And this is really important information. And, I think a lot of times Americans are just becoming tone deaf to this because it's just like one grenade after another. It's like, how many times did we have to see this Russia hoax, how bad it was, and how really what you see? I think the only way to define this, Maria, is we have people that are possessed in this country that continue to perpetuate this Russia hoax. whether it's ignoring important information like this that Kavlek had, whether it's continuing to say that, oh my gosh, bring in Hope Hicks and pretend like something really is wrong here, that Trump was colluding with Russians. I mean, there's no evidence of this, right? So the only thing they had on Russians was the Steele dossier, right? And then Joseph Mifsud, who you've talked about on your show. Those are their Russians. But guess what? They're fake Russians. They're phony Russians. They're fusion Russians. They're Russians that only the Democrats knew about. And the Democrats were the ones that were colluding with Russians. You just can't make this up. So I don't know of a better term to use than you have the Democrats in this city, in Washington, D.C., the media, for the most part, 90% of them, are possessed individuals.
Yeah.
And the sad part about it is they have a responsibility. They are poisoning and have been poisoning the minds of Americans, millions of Americans, for 2.5 years now. And the worst is they're not stopping.
Right.
They're not stopping, and that's the concern.
No, you're right. I mean, now Hollywood's getting involved as well. Robert De Niro's going absolutely lunatic on everybody with this stuff, too. We've covered this a lot. Do you think, what does your gut tell you? Did they just make it up? I mean, they knew that Russia was trying to undermine the West for decades, and they just inserted Donald Trump in there to stop it?
Well, I think it gets to the heart. Let me just get to the heart of what we have yet to answer that I hope the Department of Justice can answer under the U.S. Attorney out of Connecticut. And that is this. There were two parallel operations that were running at the same time that I believe started in late 2015, early 2016. One is the FBI was running an investigation into the Trump campaign. Not in July of 16, like they said. They're lying about that. It clearly started in 2015 or early 2016. At the same time, you had the Clinton campaign and the Democratic Party running an operation having their bagmen, Fusion GPS. They're both running an investigation on a parallel track. The thing that we don't know that we need to get to the bottom of is when did those tracks become one and the same? When, were there people that were working together with the FBI and Fusion GPS and the Clinton campaign? We know at some point they knew about Christopher Steele. My guess is they knew this early on in the process, probably at least January, February, March of 2016. And so think about that. It's Banana Republic stuff. It's stuff that you only see in countries that we would never want to live in, where the intelligence organization works with a political party and puts the other campaign under investigation for the very thing that they're doing. Yeah,
unbelievable. It's so extraordinary, which is why I agree with you. Everybody on both sides of the aisle should be out. Nunes and Congressman, before I get into Iran, and also I want to get your thoughts on China, let me ask you about your lawsuits against media. You have sued Twitter as well as McClatchy. Tell us about that.
Well, the Twitter one is important. We start the discovery process tomorrow, so we will be sending out a bunch of subpoenas and asking for information from all the folks that were involved in allowing Twitter to not only develop content, but also shadow ban me so your viewers and Americans couldn't see my tweets for a period of time. We don't even know how long. So I'm very worried about this for the next election, whether, I call the tech oligarchs, whether it's Twitter or Google or Facebook. It always seems like most of the time it's the conservatives that get kicked off and you can't see our platforms, or you can't see us on their platforms, where the left, they get away with murder. And so that's the discovery process on Twitter starts tomorrow. And then, of course, we have more lawsuits that are on the way. And I hate to be having to do this, but it's really the only way that this problem can be fixed. Because if we don't, conservatives, I think, are going to be doomed in future elections because all of these tech companies are against us. And I think Republicans and conservatives across the country need to understand this, and they need to take action now. And the only remedy we have is the court.
Are you concerned that Twitter will try to influence the election in 2020 by doing whatever they can, like shadow banning, et cetera? And
Maria, they're already doing it.
Yeah.
They're already doing it. I mean, it's clear what they've done to me is ridiculous. What they continue to do to others. I mean, you see people getting kicked off of Twitter for nothing. You see the same thing happening at Facebook. You see, 90+% of all the searches go through Google. We know that Google's been actually blocking emails from going out. So, look, there's going to be a number of lawsuits.
Is that illegal? Is it illegal, Congressman?
Well, it depends on if you can prove it in court, right? So it takes people that are willing to step up and take these companies on, which I'm willing to do, not because I want to do it, but because it has to be done, because in the long run, we can't compete if social media is totally against the conservatives and the Republican Party.
Because they say they're not media companies. Do you want to see legislation that puts them under the umbrella of media companies?
Look, I think the courts, I mean, what we're saying is that Twitter and these companies, they're content developers. They claim to be, oh, we're just an open public square. We treat everybody equally. Well, they don't treat everybody equally. It's not even close. And so what I want is I want my day in court to go before a judge and a jury to explain how it is that Twitter treats conservatives differently than the left.
Okay.
And maybe, perhaps, if they have to pay and if we have to open up their books and we have to look at all their algorithms, maybe we can fix them. And if not, then maybe they have to be broken apart. I don't know what to do.
And I know you have a court date set for the end of August on this.
That's correct.
All right, let me switch gears real quick and ask you about Iran, because the president says he's going to put new sanctions on Iran tomorrow. You were in the Situation Room. You got the briefing on Iran. What can you tell us?
Well, the thing that I thought was important to take away from that is this was the first time in my time being involved in national security issues that the president of the United States, right, and I've served under, I guess now 3 presidents now, George W. Bush, Barack Obama, and now Donald Trump. He brought in all the leaders from House and Senate that are on not only the national security committees, but the leadership in both houses of both parties. And he talked to us. He talked to all of us. And I think that's what you want to see in a leader. I don't remember that happening at all in the last administration. So I'm excited about how this president is growing, how he wants to work with Democrats and Republicans. And look, he doesn't want to go to war. And I think it's important for him to work with the Congress to make good decisions. And at the end of the day, he's the guy who is the leader. But we want to make sure that he has the support of the American people and the Congress behind him if he's going to take any actions against this Iranian terrorist regime.
Does he have the international community support? Do we have allies against Iran?
Yeah, and that's the other thing that he can take this time to do. He decided not to do a small strike. He's now, I think, going to put on sanctions tomorrow, additional sanctions. Hopefully, he can bring more allies on board to support going against the Iranian regime. Because at the end of the day, I can tell you this:
all right,
President Trump is not going to allow the Iranian regime to get a nuclear weapon. He's not going to do it.
Congressman, it's great to have you on the program this morning. Thanks so much.